Explore the vibrant arts and culture landscape of Michigan, a state with a thriving creative ecosystem that has birthed iconic movements like Motown and the Purple Rose Theater. Home to legendary musicians, writers, and artists, Michigan boasts a rich tapestry of cultural heritage known worldwide. Michigan Creates is a podcast series that will connect listeners with gifted artists and cultural institutions that are nurturing Michigan's vibrant creative landscape. Welcome to Michigan Creates. I'm your host, Ara Topouzian. In this special episode, I sit down with Esther Triggs, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Interlochen Center for the Arts, a world-renowned creative hub in northern Michigan that nurtures young artists through education and performance. In her role, Esther challenges traditional power structures and uncovers unconscious bias through the power of theater, dialogue, play, and data. It's a fascinating conversation about how creativity can drive equity and change. So let's dive in. Esther, this is going to be a lot of fun to talk to you today. I really appreciate you being on Michigan Creates. You and I met very briefly. Unfortunately, you and I didn't get to work together too long, but I think immediately when we met, I connected with you and really enjoyed talking with you. But you and I sat on the State Arts Council, and that's how we got connected. And you're still on the State Arts Council. I retired off of that. And thank you for being on the program today. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I remember one of our first council meetings sitting right next to you, and you were a bowl of energy. And I was like, are we allowed to be happy? So I loved getting to know you, and I'm excited to be speaking with you today.
Yeah, thank you. And same here. First impressions are always king. And when you first came on and you started communicating and voicing just who you were, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like her. She knows what she's talking about. So that's why, with all that put together, this is going to be a really interesting program today. So you are the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Interlochen Center for the Arts. And we're going to really dive into what that means today. But before we do that, give us a little bit of background on who Esther is and how you got to have this role eventually at Interlochen.
Yeah, well, so it's an interesting journey. I grew up outside of Grand Rapids. I was always a theater, music, I like to say brat because I was a bit of a brat. I went into musical theater for undergrad and then immediately moved out to New York City in 2001
Mhm.
and thought I would never return to Michigan, to be honest with you. There's a lot of reasons for that. I found my people in New York, in Brooklyn specifically. I loved the culture and the diversity and just the art and ability to express ourselves in New
Sure.
York City. Um, and we had wonderful friends and still do back there. But around 2020, as many things happen, or coming out of 2020, really, I was looking for a place to really settle down. I had been a consultant with my company Journey Theater Project, working with different organizations on their strategic plan and their hiring around diversity, equity, inclusion works. And I had also gotten my master's from CUNY in applied theater, which is basically using theater principles like dialogue, reflection, and action to bring communities together. And my focus was very much around, at that time, anti-racism, diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility. And so I was looking for kind of a place to settle down because I found myself getting frustrated that I would work with an organization and then in 6 months they'd send me an email and say, we need you to come back. And that just didn't feel like I was making sustainable improvements or being able to support those organizations to the best of my ability. And I was home visiting my family. It was December. So for us, it was Christmas time, but it was still COVID. So I had my own uh, I had rented a house and I got rejected from the place that I thought I was going to be in New York City working with. And
Okay.
on Christmas Eve, they sent me an email saying, "You're no longer moving on to the last round." And so I love telling this story because
What a
I
Christmas
angrily
gift.
yeah, it was a great Christmas gift, really, because I opened up my LinkedIn and one of our recruiters, who's a colleague of mine here, actually did a lot of direct messaging of people for this position here. And she had just sent me a message saying, "I'd love you to send me your resume." And so I angrily sent this resume, like, I'm not moving back to Michigan, but I'm mad, right?
Right.
Um, Anywho, long story short, it really felt like a perfect fit. Interlochen Center for the Arts is supporting young people in their art. It's turning their passion into purpose. Um, our students, we have our academy, which is about 575 students during the school year. We have a very robust camp that was founded by Joseph E. Maddie in 1928. With this last summer, I believe 3,200 campers came onto our campus. And so being able to combine my love for the arts as well as my passion and really my purpose to support organizations, but really just humans around their diversity, equity, inclusion journey, it felt like a magical fit. And it really has felt um, like I've joined a special place.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about Interlochen, and then I want to delve into sort of your role there. You talk about it's for the students. So talk to me a little bit about this citizen artistry, if you will. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, citizen artistry is one of our educational core values.
Hmm.
We have lots of core values around mindfulness, resilience, collaboration, but one of them that I think is very closely related to the work I do is this notion that we are all citizens of the world,
Hmm.
and also we are all artists, and therefore we should be using our art to make positive ripples of change in the world.
And that's
Um,
what's encouraged
yes.
to these students. Okay. So keep going on that for sure.
Yeah, so we strongly encourage them to look at ways that their art can make positive impact. We often talk about impact, and really we talk about how impact is more important than intention. We ask them to ask hard questions of their art and what the meaning is behind the work that they do. And this is whether they are the first violinist in our orchestra or a visual art student. We have seven different areas of art that we support, majors, if you will, that we support on campus. And so it's really embedded in everything we do.
Hmm.
I I I think when I was looking at whether or not I was going to come and work here, what was important to me is that they were already doing this work.
Right.
And so it's very much this notion that we should support every human to be their best human so they can be the best artist that they can be.
Right.
And that is woven through everything that we do. And so it's not an organization that just throws something up against the wall because it feels timely. It's literally on the back of our Kresge. We have a quote that says, "We're dedicated to promoting world friendship through the universal language of the arts." And that was, I don't think it was in 1928 that it was put in Kresge because Kresge came a little later, but it's definitely a founding principle
Yeah.
of Interlochen.
Are there any examples you could give surrounding that of students that have really taken that mantra to heart?
I mean, I think there's so many. One is I will speak about an alumni we just had on our campus. They started a nonprofit called Together Act Now,
Hmm.
while they were a junior here during their, I believe, a junior academy year. Um, they uh, they were an acting major, and they saw a need in Malawi for HIV AIDS awareness. And they had visited there right prior to coming to Interlochen and met some amazing folks. And so they partnered with um, the educators in Malawi to create Together Act Now to literally support that community in HIV and AIDS awareness, but also getting tested, medical supplies. So that is like on the forefront of a really amazing alumni who's who I will say alumni, but not my age alumni, right?
Right.
It wasn't so long ago that they were here and made a choice to use what they learned here to make real global impact.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a good segue into your role. So, being the director of DEI, so certainly the acronym DEI is probably a confusing one for some still, controversial for others, but it has a very strong place in the arts and culture world. And so let's talk about maybe I want to talk about your role in doing that, but let's first talk about the acronym
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
DENI because
Yeah.
it's really much bigger than the acronym. Can you try and dissect that a little bit more?
Yeah. I think so. You've said DEI like six times just now, and all
Yeah.
that I kept hearing in my head is say diversity, equity, inclusion. And I think that is um, that's like something that I've been screaming out from within without
Okay.
screaming because I don't scream often.
Right.
Because whenever we lump it together, we're actually kind of placating to that notion that DEI is its
Oh,
own individual word,
yeah.
which we know DEI actually doesn't spell anything on its
Right.
own, right?
Right.
Um,
That's a
but
good point.
but diversity,
Yep.
I love to say, um, we all are diverse within ourselves.
Hmm.
There's this intersectionality of who we are as humans. And even in a room that appears to be a bunch of people that look the same, there's diversity within that space. And I think the great lie that has been told to all of us is that somehow diversity is us versus them.
Right.
And that is why I feel that we are seeing a much more divided country. I think that is why people are confused, is because we have been once again pinned in opposition of each other. But if
Hmm.
you really think about it, you have a group of white people, and if you could see me, I'm doing white people in quotes,
Right.
right? Group of white people sitting in a room. There is diversity in that space, in their ethnicity, in their socioeconomic status, their education, whether they had one parent or two parents, whether they grew up having to take care of a parent. There's so many layers of what diversity, equity, and inclusion, that umbrella you said,
Right.
touches upon, that I think that is the thing that people have to start waking up to and understanding. As far as equity goes, when we think about access to art, for me, equity has to do with meeting individual people where they are at and supporting them to be able to have access to the arts. So it's the reason why you might have our Interlochen students, their theater production might go into other school areas, districts, and perform for those school areas that don't have theater or don't have the budget to have other touring groups come through. It's the reason why our singer-songwriters will go on tour and do master classes and support other school areas.
Right.
That's that equity, right? We're
Hmm.
bringing the art to people who don't have access. On campus, we have our accessibility series. So we partner with other local organizations so that anyone can come and see a dance performance or a musical performance here on campus,
Right.
or our visual arts, right? And so
Hmm.
that equity, people are like, oh, what's equity? Well, it's just making people be able to have access.
Accessibility. It's
That's it.
accessibility. Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And why, as humans, do we want to stop people from having access to things,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I,
We don't.
I, and then of course, inclusion is making sure everyone feels included, and that seems like really simple, but inclusion is inclusion for all. So
Yeah.
I have to have challenging conversations with folks that I don't agree with everything that they believe
Yeah.
or they stand for. But I'm here, and so I guess this comes back to my job, right?
Hmm.
I'm here to support everyone,
Hmm.
period. Students are my first and primary focus, but I support all faculty, staff, and students in their journey to feeling like they are included, um, that they have a voice, that they're
Right.
seen, that they're heard. And that's a very strong everyone.
Yeah. And it's got to be probably the most difficult part of the job, right?
Yeah, I think it would be really easy if I just ran around telling people what to think.
Well,
If I had,
and it's what's interesting too is as I'm listening to you, Esther, talk about this, and I think all of us as we're listening to this should try to think about how it's relatable to them. And
Mhm.
so when I hear and I will start saying diversity, equity, inclusion, and I won't use the acronym anymore. Um, when I think of diversity, and I shared with you sort of offline that, my nationality is Armenian. I'm 100% Armenian. I was born in this country. Probably growing up, I viewed myself maybe solely as just white until I started playing music. And I felt that also the need and the desire to really showcase where the music that I'm performing kind of came from, which is that diversity piece. Now, the equity is also similar. I can also apply that as far as the accessibility. So I enjoy doing performances where I can actually talk about the music and the
Mhm.
history.
Mhm.
I particularly like doing it for non-Armenian audiences
Yeah.
for that purpose of bringing them something that they haven't experienced before. The inclusion piece, rightly so, probably a little bit more difficult to kind of quantify for me a bit, but I guess I would view it as trying to bring people into the fold of why I like what I do, why I do what I do, why it's important for them to know what that is. So I mean, I guess just very simplistically, this goes back to it's it's three words that really shouldn't scare anybody. It really has a daily um, consumption for all of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think, you know, I honestly, I love what you said about bringing it back to yourself. And I try to do that whenever I'm doing a workshop. I start with the individuals and trying to connect with them because as humans, we care about ourselves first.
Hmm.
That it's natural and it's normal. And so if you want to bridge that connection, if you want people to understand your music, you're sharing and giving of yourself in that space, and that's your gift for all of them. And then on the other end is you might learn about their favorite music
Right,
or what they appreciate about your music or what
right.
questions they might have. And so now we're in that dialogue, right?
Hmm.
Now we're as humans communicating with each other. And so inclusion is now effortless because we care to hear what other people think. We care to learn about their culture, their background. their weird things their family used to do on family trips. We care about them, and so
Yeah.
we can have empathy for that person because we now have connected it back to ourselves. Because empathy has to come from our own personal experience,
Right.
right? If we're not
Right.
making those connections, then no, we're not
Yeah.
getting there.
So let's go back to, I mean, that's all excellent. I mean, there's so much to unpack with that, but I want to go back to your role too, because you've touched on it a bit. So what's day to day for Esther as the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Um,
Look,
that's my least favorite question.
ah, well
No,
then spin it and give
I
me,
will.
yeah,
No, I love it. I love it. I love it. Because the day to day looks different each day.
it should, right?
And it should. When I first began, one of my goals, that first year is, of course, a learning year and challenging. And I made some wonderful, beautiful mistakes. But I said to our provost, I said, I'm feeling this first year I've been about 70% reactive.
Mhm.
And my goal is to get to 60% proactive, 40% reactive for the second year, right?
Right.
And now I feel much more uh, confident that I'm moving maybe closer to 70% proactive and 30% reactive. But so a day in a life, it might be meetings like everyone else has, right? We're having organizational committee meetings. We might be planning a large event, so there's lots of meetings.
Yep.
And then there's those touch points with students. The beauty of our community is that our students know that if they're having a challenging moment, they can come to myself. They can go, frankly, they can go to the president. They can send an email to any one of us, and we are incredibly responsive. And so, part of my day might be meeting with those students who have different needs or challenges. I really partner across all the different departments. So if that's working with presents on our accessibility series or student life, I work very closely with all of them in supporting their support for the students. That's the out of classroom uh, work that they do. Um, our student activities are phenomenal at celebrating everyone's uh, culture and heritage and helping people learn about each other. Our faculty, our art faculty, to be honest, I feel very blessed to
Hmm.
be working in a place that cares as much as they do for yes, for the students, but just for like on a human level, right? And
Right.
I've been using that saying human a lot because I think that's like the root of where we need to get back to, that we're one race, we're the human race, and you should
Yep.
care about your fellow human person next to you, right? And so when we think about diversifying our curriculum, I did an audit a couple years ago. It looked to me like we actually were very diverse in our curriculum. That had nothing to do with Esther coming in and telling people this is what you should do. It
Right.
came out of curiosity from our faculty and our students saying this is what we want to learn. So when you ask me what a day to day looks like, it's hard to put an exact finger on it. But I do want to say that to be honest, the work is supporting everyone to feel like they belong, are included. It can be about your dietary needs, whether religious or not religious. It can be access to the buildings and talking about which buildings we need to upgrade for accessibility purposes. It can be your learning needs. Um, it's it's really about looking at your community and trying to figure out what they need to thrive.
Esther, talk to me about diversity, equity, inclusion as far as merit is concerned, because there's so many people, it seems, that view this as anti-merit. Can you dispel that for us?
One, when folks say it's anti-merit, they are
Yeah,
literally discounting because in their head, diversity is us versus them,
right,
right? So
right.
somehow they got the job based on being not a part of my group, my people. So
Hmm.
there's that fear factor, right? I've lost
Hmm.
out on something. And
Hmm.
so that's a great lie because it also makes people think I would have gotten it if only there
Right,
was no diversity, equity, and inclusion. Where in actuality, you might have gotten it, or you might not have gotten it. You might not actually be as talented as you think you are, right? Um, but what was really where diversity, equity, inclusion, and even where they confuse it with affirmative action and some of those policies, it really wasn't about just getting people through the door. It was about supporting folks once they're through the door
hmm,
and getting rid of the door so that they can have access, right? So it's those barriers again
right.
that we are breaking down. It's why you might have a job fair in a local area that's easier for people to have access to if you're trying to recruit more folks to come and work with you, which we know there is a worker shortage. And so that's a smart thing to do,
Right.
right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, when you think of it from a merit standpoint, I would assume that people need to do their job well in order to be successful at their job, and that you shouldn't hire them if they are not able to do the job.
Hmm.
And I also assume that people grow in their jobs. So if they didn't have access to knowing everything out of the gate, that there are mentorships that can help people learn and become phenomenal employees of any institution. So this notion of merit or DEI, diversity, I'll say this is the time I'll say
You use the
DEI.
acronym. Yeah.
I know. I'm going to say it. DEI being anti-merit, fine. You can take those words and throw them out the window, right?
Right.
But diversity, equity, inclusion is about advocating for people. And
Right.
so the child, if you think about hard work, right? The child who has not learned to work hard still deserves someone to advocate for them. The a person who is at the end or later year of their life still deserves someone to advocate for them, whether they can work hard any longer or not.
Hmm.
And so when we focus on this notion of merit, um, you're discounting all the human beings that need other people to stand up and support them.
That's a
And
perfect explanation. And probably a good spot to stop, to be quite honest, because I think we could certainly keep going. Esther, thank you very much. For those that are listening too, if you can ever catch Esther doing one of these workshops or moderating a discussion, don't miss it, because I think this is exactly what you'll hear. And this was very enlightening. Actually got me to think about it a little bit differently too. And so I appreciate talking to you today. Thank you, Esther.
well, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to when we can get together and keep talking. So,
Exactly. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Michigan Creates. We hope you've had fun diving into the creativity of our state. From Motown melodies to artisanal wonders, Michigan never fails to dazzle. But hey, the creativity doesn't stop here. Connect with us online, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new episodes. Help us spread the word and also share your own artistic stories. So until next time, I'm Ara Topouzian, and I want you to keep those musical instruments in tune, keep those paintbrushes moving, and keep those cameras rolling. Remember, in Michigan, the only limit is your imagination. Stay creative.